Welcome to the Third Man Up podcast, your one-stop shop for the serious and not so serious side of Australian sports. Join the lads as they discuss what's going on in the world of sport and preview all of this weekend's action. Now, here are your hosts, AFL media superstar Peter Spida Everitt and the world-class amateur Brody Burrows.
Yes, welcome to the Third Man Up podcast, second week in now, and coming off a big weekend of footy and plenty of other sports going around at the moment too. I'm your co-host, Brody Burrows, and with me I've got the absolute legend, Peter Spida Everitt. How you going, Spide?
Oh, I tell you what, there is absolutely so many sports going on. It's amazing. We had the Masters over the weekend, we had UFC, you name it, but even in the AFL, you just try and pick a winner. I tell you, what's more frustrating is when you look at a couple of different multis and, you pick a player to get, 2 goals and he kicks 1 goal through, or you have them to have 25 touches and they finish on 23. Now, that was the story of the weekend, but yeah, real. And I like to take the player multis only because, at the moment, you cannot predict the winner. You can get 1 or 2, but they're hard to find. They are hard to find.
Exactly. It's a bit the same in the horse racing at the moment, especially on Saturday at Randwick. It was a lot of the roughies coming from the clouds, but
you don't have to talk about that. My 2 horses, one of them was terrible. One of them still run. I actually think I could have ridden it better.
Yep.
It was that bad at Doomben. So yeah, let's not go down the horse. Let's stick to the footy.
No, that sounds good, mate. So quiet weekend it was for you, I hear.
Yeah, surprising. Like a lot of people would love me to lose my voice, and it happened over the weekend. So I was actually supposed to go to New Zealand over the long weekend and do a bit of renovation down there. But, driving to the airport after work on Thursday and it was no good. And I just said, look, I can't go. And I rang my doc and he said, you've just got to rest. You can't talk. You've just got to rest. Gave me some steroids to help it out. It's like doing the hamstring injury of the throat. So, yeah, from Friday, Saturday, Sunday and Monday, did not talk to anyone. Just did not even answer the phone, just text message. That was it. It's getting a little bit better now. It's a little bit tender, but we're good to go. We're getting back into it.
No, that's what we like to hear. And Asada won't be checking out the office with the steroids, will they, mate?
yeah, the old horse tranquilizer or something, or whatever they have these days. But I've drug tested a few times in my career, and happily said I passed them all. So that was always a positive.
That's always good. And might as well get into our tips from the weekend. How'd you go? What'd you end up with?
I ended up terrible 4. Like there's a couple of teams. I think, you take your certainties out of there and, Geelong, which was a nervous half a game, but, that one. And then, of course, Melbourne. But, the Saints really showed me. I thought the Suns could challenge them and do something, but, they were terrible. The Suns, unfortunately, they really, really struggled. They just haven't got a second option. So we saw that on the weekend. Port Adelaide again, I thought they jumped out and, well, whoever thought, you celebrate a little bit early and it comes back to haunt you. So, but you know what? Then again, I had the Bulldogs as well. So I thought, they fought on well. Melbourne, Brisbane, Collingwood, you can go through every game. It was just every game had their little story.
It definitely did. And we'll get into Thursday night's game. And you mentioned it last week, the big fella, Oscar McInerney and Collingwood without a ruckman. And I think that was the difference. There was a few times that the Pies, they were just a bit unorganised, and that was when the Lions jumped on top of them, a few centre bounce frees, and Lions got on top and kicked away.
Yeah, they did. And I think Rayner back forward as well, massive in for them. He's a solid unit. He can play, he can jump, he can mark, he can kick, he can do the lot. So that was great. But same thing. We'll touch on who's Collingwood playing this weekend, but they have only lost 2 games. They've won 15 out of their last 17. So. You're not going too bad. You're going to have a quiet day at some stage, and a lot of teams do have it at the Gabba. So, I wouldn't be too worried if I was a Collingwood supporter, but at the same time, they just do get numbers around the footy. But, the big man was key.
They do, and Nick Dacos, another great game by the young fella, over 30 possessions and 2 goal 2, and I think you've made it when you have a game like that and people are still sitting back pointing out things that you did wrong during a game as a couple of contests and that. And I think that's when you're a bona fide superstar, when people pick out little moments like that.
And it was also good, to see Ashcroft in there as well. So, these 2 young guns and, you go through the whole weekend and, you name a couple of the Saints players as well. You made North Melbourne. There's some really good talent coming through the draft. So, the draft at the moment and what they've been able to pick up and some of these players living up to their expectations has been fantastic. So that's probably been the highlight so far in the first, little part of this season is just the young talent coming through, ready for AFL footy.
Yeah, I found it funny. I saw a couple of Collingwood fans put on there, why are they playing Country Roads after every song? And it wasn't after every song. It was, after every goal. It was just every goal that Charlie Cameron kicked, and he managed to kick about 6 in about 15 minutes there at one stage.
Absolutely, and he was singing it as well. So he was loving it, Charlie. Well, you know what? I'd prefer that to come on than he riding his motorbike. I wasn't a massive fan of the motorbike. Mind you, I was a massive fan of the ACCA. The ACCA handstand, I still love punch, and he'll pull out the handstand. But the Charlie Cameron motorbike didn't do much for me. So, play a little bit of music.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next game. Good Friday. It was. I thought this was a really good spectacle as well. Obviously raising money for the kids' charity. It was Carlton 107 defeated. I thought North Melbourne. They played really well and only went down by 4 goals.
Yeah, they did. And this is what I like about North Melbourne. They're very similar to, you look at, even St Kilda. They're putting themselves in. They've got new coaches. They're putting themselves around the money. They're having a crack, and they're having a crack for 4 efforts. And it was, 4 quarters, and it was a really big game for them. We know they did a lot of publicity around Royal Children's Hospital, which was fantastic, the Good Friday appeal. And there's just a couple of other clubs that need to take a little bit of a leaf out of their book and do the same. So, well done to North. I think they're going to be beaten, but gee, they're going to learn a lot this year.
Yeah, and especially when obviously losing Griffin Logue to suspension, they had a pretty undermanned backline, and coming into that, obviously it was just Carlton's key forwards that got a hold of them. 10 goals between them, and that was the difference.
They're freaks, aren't they? And what I love about it is, last week, there's a lot of talk about them playing too close, getting in each other's way. This week, they went in the opposite and delivered each other the footy.
They did.
It's like, what can't they do? Like they are, and it's great to see how they get around each other. They want to make each one of them the star. So, early in the week, before yesterday, before Geelong played, you would have sat there and gone, gee, Curnow for the Coleman.
Yeah.
And then Jeremy Cameron comes out and kicks 7 and says, hang on, this isn't over yet. I'm still here. So it's fantastic.
It's great to see key forwards kicking goals. It's always exciting for the crowd, especially when they start creeping up. Anything above 5 is a good goal.
It's a good day out.
It is. Next game, Crows defeated, I'm going to say, a hopeless Fremantle, and they're just not exciting to watch.
They were last year, though.
They were.
Fremantle were fantastic. And what I loved about this was the fact that, there'd been a lot of speculation around the Crows, and they were able to deliver consistently. And that's what I love. They're hard at it. They continually ran. They moved the ball well. They've got a really good bunch of young guys and a really good bunch of old guys. So they've got a good mix at the moment. And, leading into the big gather round this weekend at Adelaide, it was great to see the 2 Adelaide teams get a win for that, just to bring the hype around Adelaide. I'm sure, when we'll talk about it, it's like the Olympics. It's like the Royals have come to Adelaide. It's going to be massive. So we look forward to that. But, on the other hand, Freo are far from exciting. Their coach has to start, trying to do something a little bit different, because last year they were exciting. I loved watching them last year. I remember being at the G, seeing them beat Melbourne at the MCG, and then, they've really fallen off.
They have, and just on that game, Jordan Dawson looks like he's moved into a bit of a midfield role. And if you're a key forward, you would absolutely love this fella kicking to you, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. And that, that gives Tex a couple more years when you're getting them delivered like that. And, just nice and straight down your throat. But Isaac Rankin as well, he's been huge. Like, he's going to be the mayor. Don't worry about, you're talking about politics in Adelaide. Well, Isaac Rankin could be moving to that, because they're loving him there at the moment too.
I haven't seen this much hype around a player in Adelaide since the great Eddie Betts was playing for the Crows.
And how good was Eddie?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you saw, he kicked a goal from the pocket, and he turned around and he pointed down saying, "This is my pocket now."
You love them, don't you? You love how they just do a little bit of smack talk, and Eddie would have loved that as well. So I'm sure there's 2 pockets to every end of the ground, so they can have 1 each.
Oh, I think Eddie's got all 4 at the moment still. It's going to take
absolutely.
It's going to take a fair bit to knock him off. But next game was Western Bulldogs defeated Richmond in what was a pretty wet weather. Oh, which was just a scrappy game, really, wasn't it, at the G?
Yeah, it was, but and this when the rain started to come, did it favour? Richmond was going to favour the Bulldogs, and I still like the Bulldogs. We spoke about Libba last weekend being fantastic. Tommy English, the big fella, again, as you say, dominance of a ruckman. But the Richmond midfield, when they bring in Taranto and a couple of others to really drive the ball forward for them and get a little bit of stick, they really didn't have that. I don't really they haven't really got what they wanted out of those players at the moment. Dusty's still, not at his best shape. Bolton's still probably just not at his best either. So Richmond got a lot of improving to do, but you got to do that on the back of a couple of wins as well.
Yeah, I found it interesting, Trent Cotchin as the sub. I thought, usually the subs, that dynamic, that quick player that can come in and change a game, and nothing against Trent Cotchin. He's a superstar of the game, former Brownlow medal winner, but he's struggled with his pace. And, if you're going to bring him in as a sub, it just I find it a bit weird.
Yeah, it was weird. And that's a good pickup because, you kind of sit there at the other teams. And I was watching, even Hawthorn, they had Wingard, nice, quick. I think it was North Melbourne. They had come from the Gold Coast Suns, Greenwood.
Yeah, Hugh Greenwood. Yeah,
Hugh Greenwood, and he come on and did a great job.
Yeah,
so you're right. It was that pace, move, quick, try and get something a bit different going. So, and plus you want your best players, not your subs, your worst player.
Yeah,
Cotchin's in your top 10. Put your Cotchin in the middle, in the middle of the start of the ground. That's what you're wanting for.
Especially wet weather footy, whether he's not going to get found out on the outside in wet weather footy. You're going to want someone like Cotchin on the inside.
Yeah, win early. If you're 4 or 5 goals up at half time, does it matter? You'd rather him playing in the first half than second half.
Yep, spot on. And St Kilda versus Gold Coast. But just quickly before we get into that, I better do this.
Yeah, listen to that. Well, they are on fire at the moment, aren't they?
Oh, they're great to watch. I'm loving watching the Saints at the moment.
And that's what I think a lot of people do. Ross Lyon, he's on cloud 9 and he's very optimistic about, we're not going to go the whole year without losing games. We'll lose games. But again, it's just those young players that have been able to run pressure. The Suns did challenge them for a quarter, but when you're doing it for 4 quarters, they couldn't keep up. And, they, as much as I've been watching them this year, they really surprised me. I thought they just really outran it well, ran hard, chased hard, the discipline around doing all the small things. It was just a pleasure to watch. And, Higgins and these guys, I actually just want to see. I want to go to St Kilda training, just have a competition to see who can actually just kick a drop punt goal. See if it's possible for someone just to kick a normal, down the line, straight drop punt goal because they don't like it.
Oh, it's working for them, whatever they're doing at the moment.
Absolutely.
But Brad Crouch, I thought this was an interesting little point. 7 disposals to half time. Finished the game with 34. So that's 27 disposals in a final half of footy.
Imagine that if you had that. That would have been a 50 disposable game. If you had that, that's a cracking stat, isn't it? And that just, for the Gold Coast Suns on the other side, and, I spoken about this, they're dreadful. And this is really tough. It's a tough time for the Suns right now because they've been given a lot of time. They've got some good players, but they just seem not to have that urgency and consistency of your North Melbournes, of even Hawthorn. Even though they got smashed on the weekend, they still at least battled. At least I know, a little bit differently. But the Suns, they've just got the one midfield that get worn down, and they just need a bit more in the tank. They just need a little bit more opportunity for other players to come in and try different roles. So, real big pressure cooker is on the Gold Coast Suns coaching panel, I think.
There is, and I think if you look at the Suns, where they've sort of been getting beaten is been their depth, I reckon, over the last sort of 3 to 4 weeks. It's those bottom 6 to 8 players that, they've really got a hold of. Most teams that, whether it's they're small defenders or even that second, rate when they go into the midfield, they just get absolutely smashed when, Miller and Rao and Anderson go out. That's where they get absolutely smashed. And you could see it on the weekend when they didn't have Jared Witts. Rowan Marshall was nearly the best man on the ground.
Yeah, and that's going to be the tough call now is that, the Suns need to develop and bring through a few more extra players and get games into them early because time's running out and, you can no longer just, pussyfoot around these players. If they want to go home, allow them to go home. Just stick with players that want to stay on the Gold Coast and play football. There should be enough of them around there. So, you know what? They've got a bit of work to do. And if they have another terrible year, it's going to be a tough, long year.
I think it will be. But just before we move on, Callum Wilkie, he's my All-Australian fullback at the moment. He's having an outstanding year.
Absolutely. And, some of these, backmen or some of these players that just pop up and, it will be interesting in halfway through the year. We'll do All-Australian, but yeah, fantastic. And let's nothing pass. Saying that, Ben King's coming off a bit of an injury as well. So he's a bit rusty at the moment, but still just being able to take those marks and control down back. And every good team has a solid back six.
Mm-hmm. No, can't argue with that. And Port Adelaide versus Sydney. Now, this was an absolute roller coaster of a game. At quarter time, I just jumped onto Twitter and there was a hashtag Sack Hinkley getting spread around by a lot of Port Adelaide supporters. And I thought, game's not over yet. Anything could happen here. And then...
what about that last kick?
Aliir. What a game he played. And I thought, I couldn't believe it. No one on the goal line to even shepherd out. I thought that was a massive mistake by the Swans.
Well, it's your number one thing, isn't it? It's your number one, as a ruckman. If they're having a shot after the siren, everybody's got to be on that goal line. Mm-hmm. Everyone's going to be shepherding it through, trying their best. So, the celebrations were up early. The ball was in the air and everybody was jumping up and down, except, of course, Aliir, the goal umpire, and Ken Hinkley. So, look, it was a remarkable finish to a football game. I don't think I've seen too many like that. So, it was well done to Port Adelaide. It was a hard fought. Nobody gave them a chance. And I think, you're saying that, they've had a really tough start to the season. So a lot of people will probably put the boots in a little bit early. But, you know what? A win's a win. It'll be great for them this weekend as well. Let's see. One hot day doesn't make a summer. Let's see what they can do this weekend.
Exactly right. But one thing to come out of the game, I think the whole football world's, they've got the fingers and toes crossed for, not just whether it comes back to footy, but just for his genuine health, is the unfortunate injury to Paddy McCartan. Didn't look good at the time, and everyone's just thinking about the poor fellow at the moment.
Absolutely. There's not a lot in it. It didn't look like a lot at all. He come off. I know a lot of people aren't calling it, but you'd have to call it. You've got to call it. You cannot risk this any longer. And I can't remember the guy's name. It was probably 4 years ago, Brisbane Lions player who stepped away from football. He wanted to be a pilot. Yep. And they said, unless you quit footy, because if you have another concussion, you'll never, ever live your dream of being a pilot. And, he had to give away football. It's tough. It's a head injury. We don't know what the ramifications are down the track. We know with knees, we can see the knee, we can see the elbow, but, a really heartfelt moment for Paddy McCartney, no doubt.
Yep. No, thinking of you, Paddy, and also the family too, because the older brother Tommy also went through the concussion protocol, so it would have been a tough watch for the family. But we'll move on to the Essendon game. Essendon 88 defeated GWS. Now, if you were watching this at home, I'm not going to lie, this was a shocking game to watch on telly, but it was dominated by the package. 10 scoring shots for Jakey Stringer.
He's a freak, and he's one of my favourites, there's no doubt. He's when he's up and about, the Bombers are up and about. Football world's up and about. He knows how to turn on. He was fantastic. But, GWS should never have put him in that situation. They just went forward, just dumb, silly moves going forward. And, at times their turnover, you sit there and go, hang on, you're still a professional team. Sometimes you've got no pressure and you're still turning it over. You understand one or two times, but not consistently. What I loved about this, and there's so many people on the back of it saying it was a joke, is the coach come down and gave it an absolute barrel. He let both of them rip and told him exactly what he thinks, and so he should have. Yeah. They should have. GWS are a much better side than what they showed then against the Bombers, and I was really disappointed with GWS. And unfortunately, 3 or 4 players for them can't do it week in, week out. They, like the Gold Coast Suns, need other players to step up and say, you know what, we're all in this together. So the coach absolutely should have given them 2 barrels. I would have given it to them at halftime and 3/4 time as well. Every quarter, and probably after the game.
Best barrel given of the day was definitely Jakey Stringer with that running barrel from outside 50. Good.
And after the game, he goes, I didn't know what I was doing. And he said, I practice them all the time. So he goes, I'll let one rip and it goes through. But I always remember Malcolm Blight because of his goal he kicked, and he went from 60 to 70 to 80, but I think it's about 120 metres now. And even playing under Blight, his rules were absolutely, if you think you can kick it, you bring it out and you have a go. But if it doesn't come off, you put it away until next week. So Jakey Stringer, he would have still had another one. He could still keep going with them because it come off.
He should have kept doing it because he kicked 4-6. He should have done every shot like that by the sounds.
It was a great afternoon from him.
It was. Next game, Melbourne 126, probably as expected, just dominated West Coast 63. But I think, with all West Coast injuries, at least they put up a fight against what is probably the premiership favourites in Melbourne.
And this is what you don't mind. I know that, they were always, and what I loved about this too, there's a lot of West Coast fans out there too, a lot of fans showing their support when they knew realistically were they going to get over the line. Probably not. It was always going to be tough. But gee, they ran them. They gave them a really good, first 1.5 quarters, and Melbourne, did finally get on top and then just absolutely open them up. But it was great to see that West Coast at least started to fly the flag, and with the players they were missing, good game of footy.
Yeah, it was, and you can just see West Coast at the moment. I think they've put all their money in and hope into the ruck stocks with Nick Naitanui, and with him, I think what has he played? 12 games over the last 2 years, just about, and Brody Grundy just dominated the game from the from the centre bounce. And I think West Coast are lucky there wasn't a Max Gawn sitting with him, otherwise it could have got proper messy. And
this is the tough thing at the moment, isn't it? A lot of the teams we're talking about, and we'll touch on it in a minute, is the ruckman. Every team needs a good ruckman. It sounds silly, and I'm a massive fan of a ruckman. I won't surprise you by saying that at all. But they're worth their weight in gold. But there's a few incidents coming up at the moment that I don't like in the way ruckmen are behaving. But at the same time, I think it's really important that you do need a good ruckman. You need first use of the ball. If you get first use of the ball, suddenly then you're in the game's being played in your half. So that's what I love about Grundy. And as you say, for them to pick him up for a round of drinks off Collingwood last year, Collingwood has got one now. You sit there and go, well, hey, how fun is that?
It is, and we'll get into that. Geelong 127. Just what a game this was at halftime. Hawks are in front by a goal, and then after halftime, 25 scoring shots to 4. So Geelong just blew them out the water.
Yeah, I think they kicked 13 goals straight. Sat there and watched this game too, and in the first half, I'm thinking Geelong did look old. They actually looked like they're, when they turned up to Mad Monday and they were dressed up, I actually thought they were just putting on the jumpers. That's what they looked like. They did. They looked slow. They look old. Hawthorn were dominant. They kicked the first 3 goals. You're thinking, could this be an upset of all time? And then after halftime, I don't know what was said in those change rooms, but they come out, they ran, they chased, they turned the ball over, they kicked it dominantly to their forwards. They just turned it on, and Hawthorn had absolutely no answers. So could this be the kickstart that everybody's been waiting for, and what the Cats needed? Because they've got a side to do it, and they didn't look slow in the second half. It was only the first half. So whatever was in that drink at halftime, give it to them before the game.
And fatherhood is definitely suiting Jeremy Cameron. Another 7 goals by the big fella.
He's on fire, and how good. And as we said, when you're seeing big forwards kicking big goals and big numbers of goals too, and they weren't all easy kicks. And you sat there and Hawkins put his 2 bob in, and Stingle, and then Gary Rowland. So look, they're playing a good brand of football, but no different to Carlton when you've got McKay and Kerno. How can you keep Hawkins and Jeremy Cameron down? It's going to take a solid back line to be able to do it. Yeah,
and I think a lot of people have they've talked about Geelong had probably a bit of a slower start. They're always going to have a slower start. And if you look at the next run, they could possibly win 3 out of the next 4. And then, they could go into round 8. If they go in there 3 and 4, you can pretty well back him in for a top 8 and maybe even a top 4 spot once they get rolling.
Don't forget, towards the end of the year too, they play a lot more games at home
in Geelong.
So, it kind of all starts to open up for them again. So, look, as you say, you just needed that monkey off your back. So they got it and they did it well. So hopefully it puts them into a little bit of form.
Yep, it should definitely do. So I've got a couple of bigger talking points I just want to take from the weekend. Number one is I think there was a lot of pressure last week put on Port Adelaide, and at the start of the year, people were saying if they win 2 out of the first 5 games, if they go into round 5, 2 and 3, that's probably par. They played first game of the year, Brisbane at home. Next one was Collingwood away, the Showdown at home, which is always a 50-50, Sydney away, and then the Bulldogs. And that's one of the hardest first 5 games you could probably get.
Yeah, I think until you kind of show that to everybody and say, this is what Port Adelaide's had to face. And as you say, Brisbane in Brisbane, Collingwood. So, look, it has been a tough one. It was good that they got that win. I think they definitely needed that win, which will lead them into this weekend beautifully. But it's just about how you go about it, and the positive you keep up, because at the same time, it is only 4 weeks into the season. Yeah. There's no reason you can't win 12 at the end of the season. So it's not a matter of who you play; it's when you play them. So Port Adelaide at the moment, just to get that one win, and a good gutsy win too against a very, very good quality side. So that's all they need to do is get the win, and they were able to do it.
Yep, spot on there, Spide. And one thing I really need to draw attention to this, Isaac Rankin copped some racial abuse online, and it was by a fake profile, and it's something that is disgusting and absolutely cowardly, and it really, really grinds my gears. And I think there's a lot more that needs to be done, because this happens on a far too often occurrence. And I think the best way to do this is if you want a Facebook profile, if you want a Twitter profile, if you want an Instagram profile, anything on social media, you should have to link your phone number to it, in my opinion. And people could say, that's an invasion of privacy. But if you're going to be out in this space and you're going to be throwing out disgusting, hurtful comments like this, then there needs to be consequences.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I've never thought of it looking at it that way. But the other reason is the other way I look at it, even for Isaac Rankin and these guys that are bullied or racial vilified online, is if it's from a profile with nothing, like, how weak's the person anyway? Like, exactly. To be honest, let's be honest. Like, if you're getting cop abuse, it's like back in the 90s, you cop a letter abusing you, and it's from an anonymous. Like, hang on, put your name. If you got enough balls and guts, put your name to it, own up to it, and say, yeah, this is me. So realistically, I know it's hard when it's consistent. It's been around, unfortunately, for generations. Water off a duck's back. If someone's not putting their name to it, absolutely wipe it. So it's a really hard one. And then the hardest thing with this, and I think you're right with the phone numbers, is that you look at this person can't be contacted. Nobody knows who it is. Mm-hmm. But then in the Adam Good situation, when you call somebody out, why then does he get crucified? Because if this person had their symbol or their name and that online, we would have published that everywhere as well. So
of course we would have.
You've got to be very, I think great point, but at the same time, I still can't believe they can't find who makes these accounts. They follow everything we do, everywhere we go. They know your device. They know where you are. They know what you're doing. They're watching us 24/7. Mm-hmm. I'm sure with the technology they got today, they'll find out where that profile was made up.
Yeah. You can't argue with that. But the whole of South Australia, pretty well the whole of Australia, I think Isaac Rankin's now got on board. So he's the king of South Australia at the moment, and I reckon he's got the whole rest of Australia behind him, and similar to the way everyone was behind Tamara Ugle-Hagan last week.
And that's a hard thing. 2 in 2 weeks, that's what's disgusting. That's what's tough. The AFL's putting a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money. All of Australia is. Yet there's some clowns out there that continually just be exactly that, clowns.
Yeah. Now the next one is as good as West Coast were on the weekend. I think they need a serious look at their list management. Their young side at the moment, even with their superstars, that they wouldn't be able to compete for a premiership, in my opinion. But they don't have the young stars there to develop into a future premiership side. And I think at the end of this season, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some former All-Australians on the chopping block, mate.
Yeah, I wouldn't. You could have nearly done it this year, I think. Yeah. To get a little bit more bang for your bucks. But there's definitely a couple of players there, and you can't leave the run too late. It's a real fine line. And Alistair Clarkson was very good at this at Hawthorn. Yeah. He allowed a couple of players to go towards the end of their careers, and were able to bring players in and able to stay at the top, stay semi-okay. So look, West Coast do need if they're going to rebuild fully, they're going to rebuild properly. And as you say, those players aren't going to be there either in a coaching capacity or as a mentor role. You're better off moving them on and getting other younger players in to kind of play that role. So, it's a tough one. But at the same time, when you've got so many injuries, if they'd made the top 8, we wouldn't be saying it, would we? So it's hard to judge when you've got such a big injury list.
Yeah, and that's another thing. The amount of money that they've got on their injury list, I think it would be just phenomenal at the moment.
They'd have to be nearly over the cap. I don't know what will happen there. So, because as soon as you go over the cap, obviously fines and things come in. So players are on set contracts, and they wouldn't have been expecting to play so many players and then so many of their top liners out for a long period of time. So, their cap will be under pressure.
Yep. And the one last thing I sort of want to have a little bit of I found it hard just watching a few games on the weekend, and you could tell that the games weren't commentated live at the game.
Yeah.
They were commentated from a studio in Melbourne, and it really annoys me. The AFL can fork out hundreds of millions of dollars for the TV rights, but they don't want to fly commentators up there. And I can understand if they don't want to do that, but I know Western Australia and South Australia and even Queensland, they've got some excellent local commentary, people doing local footy. Get them in to do it if they don't want to pay for their own to go up there.
Well, I think you make a great point. Unfortunately, these days they don't, and they shouldn't be allowed to do it. It's got to be live. And, when you listen to it, it's not live because they sit there and they're not allowed to comment by saying live, like, oh, what's happening what's happening at the boundary line. Yeah. So there's certain ways they talk about it. And it's really hard to call it off the screens as well because you can't see forward and back. You can only see what's on television. So I agree with you. I reckon the AFL and Channel 7 and also Fox, there's that much money in it. Just don't have different commentary teams. Like I live on the Gold Coast. I'd love to be a part of certain ones of it, Brisbane and then, Darwin. And there's so many people out there, local commentators that want to have a go. They can sit there and play a definite role in making sure that every game is commentated live at the ground. So, I reckon it should be a rule and a regulation. Absolutely love it. I'd be fighting for that every day of the week because it's a pain. I understand during COVID, absolutely. But now, when we're allowed at the grounds, let's get our commentators there. Let's call it live. Let's be there live.
Nah, you hit the nail on the head there, Spide. And my one last little thing I want to take.
Before I have one then, because I've got one as well.
Yep. Now, this one here, it's really, really grinding my gears throughout the week.
You're not happy, are you?
I'm not happy. And I'm going to play a little bit of audio.
All rightio.
Should the Showdown be given the marquee time slot on Friday night football every year?
Absolutely. And I've been saying this for a couple of years. I know it's a minority view, but I feel bring it to Melbourne, not just to make it a Friday night time slot, but bring it to Melbourne MCG. Nat, we're all going. The entire competition's going to Adelaide in round 5. If you schedule that game, okay, if you don't say MCG, let's go with Marvel Stadium. You'd fill it. You'd fill it.
That's even worse.
Adelaide Oval is amazing.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Oh, Spida.
Oh, how could you pot? That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard of. And I know Damien, he can say ridiculous things.
Yep. So that was on Access All Areas with Matthew Lloyd and Nat Edwards and Damo Barrett. But Damien Barrett, now listen here, mate. Leave the outrageous curls to the volcano. Focus on what you do best, and that's just annoying Bevo. Let's be honest. Let's just unpack this statement. You want the showdown between two Adelaide teams to move to Marvel Stadium to allow it to grow. Marvel Stadium's capacity is 53,359 people. What do you reckon the Adelaide Oval capacity is, Spide?
Oh, see, I would have thought 44,000.
53,500, so more.
Oh, 120 more.
Yep, 100%. So you want to move the biggest rivalry currently in AFL footy to somewhere where majority of the fans won't even go. So, Damo, take off your Harry Potter looking rose-coloured glasses and allow somewhere other than Victoria to thrive. Seriously, if we're going to do this, we might as well move the Derby to Tasmania, the Anzac Day clash to the Giant Stadium, and the grand final to the Gold Coast. Right, that's me done, Spike.
Absolutely. I totally agree. You cannot take the biggest game of Adelaide out of Adelaide. I've been to one of those games. It is enormous. It's not just the game itself. It's the hype. It's the week build-up. It's everything that comes with that game of anticipation of who's going to win and how. And would you get that at Marvel Stadium? Absolutely not. Would you feel that? Victoria hates South Australia. South Australia hate Victoria. Yeah. They hate driving over the border. Like, why were they going to come here? Why is 50,000 fans going to come to Marvel Stadium in the middle of June to watch that? Come on. Even Damo, I think he must have had too many Easter eggs.
I thought, something like that, I reckon.
Well, my one over the weekend, I can tell you, is this kneeing in the ruckman.
Oh.
Ruckman knees. Like, come on, the umpires have to start pulling up this. So they started getting a little bit more protective of it. But as a ruckman, you've got to run and jump. That's the design of the middle of the ground. For a player to run into your half of that ground before the ball's bounced is illegal and should be brought up a lot more. For a player not to jump and just to raise his knee is using that as a weapon, and it shouldn't be allowed either. You've got to run and jump. If you fairly jump and knee him and injure, that is a part of the game. It's like going in a marking contest and you put the knee into the back of someone, okay? But when you just legitimately just stand there and drive that knee into somebody else's ribs, that is what I call absolutely a free kick and should be nearly reported. That's no different to punching, to forearming, to any of these situations we see on a football field. It's dangerous. It's not right. The art of rucking is actually running and jumping. If you can't jump, don't ruck. It's that easy. So for me, I think this is a real big issue for the AFL at the moment, is making sure that players don't cross that halfway line before the ball's thrown up or the ball's in the air. And the other one is making sure their knees aren't driven into other players on purpose.
I'll tell you one thing, if that was Toby Green, he'd be getting 2 weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah, great point. Yep. So, no, I thought it was disgraceful over the weekend, and it will be. There's no doubt it will be brought up this week.
Yep, no, it should be. And we'll chill out a bit. I think we just need to mellow down. We're both a little bit fired up here, I reckon, Spide. So bring us back to what's usually a pretty relaxed man and a former coach of yours for 10 months, was it?
Oh, bloody.
Yes, the bloody.
Oh, look, I think, looking at, the gather round in Adelaide this weekend, we love it. And I think, look, I thought the Gold Coast, and you brought it to my attention last week, we just wouldn't get the crowds on the Gold Coast. Yeah, absolutely we wouldn't. We'd get a lot of people travelling, but you wouldn't get your 30, 40,000 to each and every game. Where Adelaide, you will. And look, I've got some great fond memories of Adelaide. I think everybody loves Adelaide. The state of origin in the NRL is going to be played in Adelaide. You got the Supercars, you got the Fringe Festival, you got some great wineries. Like, Adelaide is going to be alive. I'd love to be there this weekend. I've seen all the mascots on the television, like even the mascots hanging around in Adelaide. We'll make it a spectacle. And, we got Blighty after he coached Adelaide to a couple of premierships. And I still remember one day we're at training and Blighty's grabbed us all in and he's gone, rightio. Okay, he grabbed 5 blokes and he goes, all right, pretend you're synchronised swimming. So we're in the middle of the footy ground, all right, all on the ground, laying on the ground, following 5 guys who are synchronised swimming in the middle of the footy ground. We're going, what is this about? So they're doing a bit of breaststroke and they're doing backstroke. The whole lot of us had to copy, 52 of us, all copy. And we did it for about 4 or 5 minutes. It was a long swimming session in the middle of the ground. And he's gone, rightio, that's it, get back to training. And we're like, what was that about? None of us, we had no idea. We're like, what's Blighty? Had no idea. And then we were all driving home and going home. And then one of us clicked. One of us worked out that they all had different shorts on than everybody else in the group. And that's how you try and tell, they're trying to be individuals. They don't want to be like us. Oh. And it took us 5 hours to work out what it was like. So, yeah, look, we love Adelaide. We love Blighty. And I cannot wait to gather around this weekend. Except one of my hardest memories walking off Footy Park, because we used to love it. You go into Adelaide and you go out to Footy Park, you go past West End, what's the beer West End there? I don't know if anyone drinks. And you'd always go to Joppies on the Saturday night. It'd be a race to get to Joppies. But I remember walking off at quarter time Adelaide Park one day, and I just gave Warren Treadray, the biggest bird of all time, just gave it to him. But the hardest thing is it was right in the middle of the television screen. They were right on me.
Oh, no.
And it's just me giving Treaders the big bird. And it cost me $5,000.
Oh,
fined $5,000. Absolutely. I thought it was money well spent, but it's
We probably could have put that up for donations from the Crow Squad, and you would have got that back pretty quickly. I reckon,
I didn't think about it. A GoFundMe page.
That's a great story, and that's the thing about, I know you up in Queensland, it's probably a lot more NRL and the rivalry, but even though even in South Australia and whether it's Perth, whenever there's just 2 sides, there's so much passion in the town itself for footy, and it's I know there's a lot of pressure in Melbourne, but I know in Perth and in Adelaide, it's absolutely huge. You know, the pressure and the scrutiny, you know, when things are going good, you're the best people in town. And when things are going bad, you know, you're the worst people in town, and the scrutiny that comes. And it's South Australia is at the moment, it's like the Olympics are coming to town, mate. It is absolutely pumping here in South Australia.
I think it's brilliant. And look, I've mentioned this about Magic Round in the NRL. I bagged it out in Brisbane, and it was a pleasure to go and see. And you know what? You go out, like for two sides to be playing out at Norwood, which is just fantastic. You get a massive crowd out there. The whole town's going to be buzzing. They're doing school visits and clinics. And, you know, we joke about the mascots, but they're going to be walking down the main street of Adelaide. You know, every night there's going to be football on in Adelaide. You can go and see 2 or 3 games. You can go and see, you know, because even though Adelaide's a 2-team town, there's a lot of, you know, supporters from other teams travelling interstate. Like, it's just a great concept to be able to get around for a weekend. So I'm a massive fan of it. I was a bit disappointed when Adelaide got it at the start, but to be honest, there's no other state that could play it. Perth's just too far away. Yep. Adelaide's got everything you need. The ground's right there in the middle of the city. So for me, I reckon it's a perfect destination for it. So they'll enjoy it. It'll be a cracking weekend.
I think it's going to be a good run. I think it's going to happen in future years in different locations. And obviously, you know, when you go to Western Australia and when you do go to Queensland, they're going to be a little bit more prepared, and they're going to know what worked, what didn't work. And I think that's going to, you know, it's down the track, it's going to be a great thing every weekend. It's going to allow the game to grow too.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? You know, they got hundreds of thousands of passionate footy fans. So it will be huge. And you know, Adelaide Oval was a great spectacle to watch footy at.
It is. And, moving on, we'll go into the current Brownlow leaderboard, which we've done through Australia Sports. And we'll start at 6 votes. We've got Chad Warner, Zach Merritt, Luke Davis-Uniacke, and Jordan De Goey. Now, juicy odds here. In equal second spot, Jeremy Cameron, $26 on 8 votes.
Well, that's what I like that. I think, you know, he's going to pull some big votes. You're kicking 7 goals. As you say, if you kick over 5 goals, you're going all right. Jeremy Cameron, Stringer, I'll tell you, if Stringer has a couple more good games, you know, he only needs 8 best on grounds, and you're roughly around the money. He's got one of those. We know that. So I like him.
And then the 2 favourites, you got Nick Dacos currently on 8 votes as well, $6.50. And my selection, he's way out in front at the moment, Clayton Oliver, 10 from a possible 12 votes so far, and still at $6.50. I think he should be at least around the $3 or $4 mark at the moment.
Yeah, he turned up beautifully on the weekend. So, you know, you sit there and, he's a gun player, isn't he? He gets in and out. He does everything right. Pushes himself to the limits. But, look, it's going to be an interesting one, the Brownlow, even like, you know, the Rising Star at the moment. The Rising Star isn't going to be a cracker when you've got, you know, players like Sheasel. You know, he's just blown up over the last couple of weeks. So I reckon the Brownlow will come, and other than Clayton Oliver, I reckon it'll come somebody left the field. And look, the Rising Star is absolutely no certainty to anyone yet.
Just on that, I'm not sure if you watched the Crows Fremantle game, but young Max Michelani looks like an absolute superstar. That young fella, there's not much of him at the moment, but he plays like he's about 20 kilos heavier and about 10 centimetres taller.
Yeah. And you know, we spoke about this at the top. There's so many good young players, so many players coming in ready for AFL football. And, you know, the Saints have got 2 or 3 on their list now that, you know, you got to, weigh up between them. So, yeah, there's some really good kids out there that could be a chance for the Rising Star. So that's another one to keep an eye on.
Nah, should be great. And I'm heading over to gather around or drive over, make the 7-hour trip over tomorrow. And I'm a little bit nervous after watching a few press conferences over the weekend, especially when Richmond aren't going well. Dimmer gets a little bit angry in those press conferences.
I dare you to ask him a couple of questions, Dimmer. Yeah, look, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, yeah, you look at Dimmer and they get fired up. They don't want to miss anything. They're not happy after a loss too. So it'll be interesting to sit in a press conference, a coach's press conference, and see how they go. Make sure you get prepared. Chuck a couple of questions at them. Is that what you're going to do? You're going to ask a few?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's the plan at this stage. So, I'm lucky enough to be in the KG Cunningham Media Centre over the weekend, which is named after the great man. KG, who was a bit of a media star over here and former Sandford umpire, and no, it should be a great weekend. So I'll be covering Thursday night with the Crows Carlton, the Freo Gold Coast and Richmond Sydney games on Friday, and then the Brisbane and North. Not the Essendon, Melbourne, and the Port Bulldogs doubleheader on Saturday. So,
well, I'll be watching most of those. So I'll send through some questions.
Yeah,
and
sit back and
don't
watch.
say they come from me. Okay, so from you.
We'll get into those games. So Thursday night, I think this could be the game of the season. Adelaide versus Carlton. It's going to be a packed crowd, and two clubs which are definitely on the rise here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Adelaide will want to start really well. They want to kick off gather round, to have a win on a Thursday night would be huge. But for me, Carlton are good. They are. They're big forwards. They got a good midfield. They got a solid six back. They didn't look over impressive over the weekend, but they're just getting the job done. So I think as a team that is absolutely accomplished all over the field, Carlton's one of those. So yeah, for me, I'm going to stick with Carlton. I think they're just at the moment they're just in a really good zone.
They are, and I think they're doing something which they didn't do last year. Is so often they'd be around the mark and they'd find a way to lose. Whereas this year they're actually finding, they're battling out games and they're somehow finding a way to win, even when they're not playing their best footy. And I think that's the big step that I've seen from them over the preseason.
I think, you're right. I think last year they lost, might have been 5 or 6 games under a goal. So, you've got to be on the other side of the ledger. And, they're not talking the F word yet, but I tell you, there's a few of my mates that are Carlton supporters that are looking at finals tickets.
I tell you what, mate, if you listen to SEN, they've already won the premiership.
Oh, really?
But we'll go on to the next one, and this could be a 0-0 draw, Fremantle versus Gold Coast at Norwood Oval. Friday,
look great at Ted Norwood. I think, they'll get a crowd, which would be fantastic. Yeah. But look, Freo have been, as we said, disgraceful. So are the Suns. So I would honestly expect the Suns to play better. I would expect them to bounce back. I know they haven't had a very successful campaign over the years, but with what they delivered on the weekend and knowing inside that football club, they'd absolutely have to challenge a few players, and I'd be looking at the Suns to bounce back. I reckon the Suns have got more upside than Freo, and I reckon, out there in the docks of Norwood, I reckon that, the Suns should win.
Yeah, I think with this one especially, when you look at it, if Jared Witts plays, in my opinion, I'm tipping the Gold Coast. But if they don't, with Big Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson, I think they'll just dominate around the ball with the two big fellas. But I think if Big Witsy plays, Gold Coast will definitely be pretty hard to beat.
A whole game on the ruckman. There we go.
Another one. It seems like every week there's a couple, mate. And then Adelaide Oval Friday night. This one should be really interesting game, I reckon. Richmond versus Sydney.
Yeah, look, wow. Which way do you go? Richmond need to bounce back. I think their midfield's going to be, challenged. And they've been questioned. I'll be surprised if Cochin is there. Emergency, no Lynch. But then you go on the other side, and you think Sydney, Hapley and Heaney and Buddy, and they still haven't played to their form of last year. So Sydney have still got a lot of upside. I think travelling really does help Sydney. They'll love it. They'll like the occasion. They'll really lift to the occasion. Can they stop the swarming Tigers when they get forward and use their pace? That's going to be the big question. I reckon they can. I reckon for me, I'd probably go Sydney. I'd be no certainty here, but I'd probably stick with Sydney. They weren't far off last week. Obviously, about that far off from winning the game. So,
exactly.
Yeah, I think I'll go with Sydney. They just seem to be in just a fraction better form than what Richmond are at the moment.
Yeah, no, I'll be going with Sydney as well. I think Tom Lynch is a big key out, especially with the McCartans likely to miss.
But at the same time, you sit there and go, well, without Tommy Lynch, then you suddenly got your Shea Boltons, your Dusties. You set up your whole 4 line completely different, which then could actually operate and help them. So they're being unpredictable. You don't know which way they're going to go. They've only got Rewalt then, one out. Suddenly, it might work for them in the other way as well.
Hopefully for the Swans, young Will Gould, he's been on the list for the last couple of years, a young South Australian fella, and I think he just can't break into that Swans team. He's been in the VFL team of the year and the Swans best player in the VFL. I think, unfortunately, Paddy Paddy and Tom McCartan's injury might give him a chance to play in front of his home crowd, I guess, on Friday night. So hopefully Will Gould can make his debut in his hometown for a gather round. That would be huge.
Well, that's what fairy tales are made of. That's where the footy gods come out. And look, I think Johnny Longmire would know that.
Yeah.
And if you've been in good form and there's an opportunity there, let's put him onto the biggest stage.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you that one. We'll move through this one pretty quickly. Brisbane, North Melbourne. It's down in Mount Barker, so it'll be an interesting one, this one. But I think the Lions are just getting into some pretty nice form, and I reckon this might be a bit of a demolition job, this one.
Yeah, it will be, but Mount Barker makes it a little bit more interesting. It's the home of the North Melbourne, the shin boners. They're out in the paddocks. They'll be sitting there going, "Come on, let's have a crack here." I think the quality of Brisbane will end up being too good, but at the same time, you just don't know the conditions. I don't think Brisbane will smash them by 100 points. I think they'll get the win, but it would be a great game to go and watch. I think the key Brisbane mids and talls will be on fire, but one thing, North Melbourne will give them a game, but they won't be good enough in the end.
Yep. This next one, top 4 clash, Essendon and Melbourne. Wouldn't have been expecting that 4 rounds ago.
Even the top 5 at the moment, all Melbourne teams, some of the big teams as well. So, yeah, look, Melbourne should smash this. The Bombers, I think, have been very, very lucky the way they've got away. Stringer really turned it on. The Bombers haven't beaten a lot over their first 5 games. You talk about Port Adelaide's tough first 4 games. Well, you look at the Bombers' first 4. So for me, Melbourne, they were good on the weekend. They'll win it again. I think, just look for Oliver to try and get another 30 and 3 votes. That's what we're kind of looking at the moment.
It is sort of at this stage, it sort of seems like Wenks is just taking him over around the corner and they're chasing him down. And it's only been 4 rounds in, but I think he's averaging something like 33 or 34 possessions and nearly a goal and 7 or 8 tackles a game. So it's when you're playing footy like that, it's pretty hard to deny. Like this game here, Port Adelaide versus Western Bulldogs, Adelaide Oval, Saturday night. This is going to be loud and it's going to be on for young and old, I reckon. Yeah,
perfect time for it. And so, we've spoken about it so much, but Port Adelaide's win means so much. The Bulldogs win. They're both sitting there in good form. I love the Bulldogs. I really enjoy the way they play their football. It's going to be a cracker. I cannot pick it. You can flip a coin and go, which way you're going to go. I'd like to believe Port Adelaide at home would have their backup, their crowd, the atmosphere there. You'd think that, the hype around the town, the build-up, everything there. Hopefully they don't play the game before they get there on Saturday night and they're able to turn it on. So for me, another big ruck, Jewel, but midfield, the bottom. For me, I'm going to stick with Port Adelaide. I don't know why. I just reckon Port Adelaide can win it.
I think with Port Adelaide, it's that old thing. It's a Jekyll and Hyde. They can come out and win by 10 goals or lose by 10 goals, or it could be a draw. You simply don't know what they're going to put up.
Which one? Because, as a punter, I want to put on my multi. I want to know which way I want to go.
It's going to be hard. And unfortunately, this next game looks like it could be a pretty rough one as well. Geelong and West Coast. I think the Cats last week just reminded the rest of the competition that they are the... It might not have seemed like it, but they are the reigning premiers, and I think this one here could go a similar way to how the last half went on the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the thing you want to watch here again, we talk about Jeremy Cameron Hawkins running himself into a little bit of form. So Geelong will use this as another stepping stone. I hope they do, to really build that fitness, to run their players hard and just get that game time, get that quality game time under their belt before they start getting a few solid games. So, tough one for West Coast. They'll... fly over with a bit of hype and expectation, but unfortunately go home with their tails between their legs. And the Cats, for me, easy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. GWS v Hawthorn, Norwood Oval on Sunday. Giants just have to win this, I reckon.
They do. The Hawks will be competitive. The Hawks were up at halftime. They were good. They weren't disgraced. They were in the second half. But you're coming against last year's premiers as well, who found form. So, look, I think Hawthorn have been really good in most of their games, in a lot of their games, at least half, 3 quarters. And GWS, I haven't seen them. They've only had one outstanding game. So a tough one for GWS. They need to drag more players along. Caniglio and Green and Himmelberg and all these blokes can't do it all. They need other players to stand up, and they need to start showing that they've got the skill of an AFL team. And Norwood will probably suit them because they're used to Western Sydney. Those suburban kind of ground. So for me, I'll be sticking with, I reckon, GWS. I'd like to see GWS win.
I'll be really interested to see who matches up on Toby Green this weekend. Obviously, they've got James Sicily, but then, they've also got the likes of CJ, like Jath, and whoever takes Toby Green is going to have their hands full. But both of those players are attacking defenders anyway, and I think that's the best way to play Toby Green is to make him chase you at the same time.
But you've got to get the ball as well, because if it turns over, you know who's going to be on the end of it, and you know who can turn it up, who loves it, and that's Toby Green. And before we get to the next game, you would have seen over the weekend with Sam Mitchell and the Hawthorn Footy Club and the bloke who has to hold up the signs. You saw the noodle sign?
I did.
Now, we had a guess to try and work out what it was.
Yep.
I had 2 minutes to the end of the quarter for 2-minute noodles.
Yep. I had a guess at this as well.
Yeah, what do you think?
I thought, I know their ruckman, Ned Reeves, is called Noodles. So I thought that could mean Reeves going into the ruck. My other thought was wet weather footy. Obviously, that was when the rain come down. Mix in, so more numbers around the ball.
Great. Yeah. I had take your time.
Yeah.
You can't eat noodles quick.
Nah.
So I was like, take your time. So slow the ball down and just take your time. And what it ended up being, that's right, they noodle type footy, just mad chaos footy. So it was a great sign. So everybody was baffled by it, but that's what we love, just the invention of something new in the footy world.
Yeah, I heard on AFL 360 they were talking about it, and Matthew Nix was on there and said, do you have anything like that? And Nix's response was, no, we like to keep it pretty simple, and don't know if some of the footballers would understand it. They'd forget it in 2 or 3 minutes.
By the time it took you to cooking.
Yeah. But last game of the round, mate, you're just saying, can they continue on their run to go 5-0 against Collingwood? This would be another excellent game on Twilight at Adelaide Oval on Sunday.
Yeah, it will be a cracker. I love this game. It's a challenge I think all Saints supporters are waiting for. If they win this, I tell you what, you'll have to jump off the bandwagon. It will be chockers. It will be jam-packed at Moorabbin. There'll be a lot of hype if they win this. I'm going to find it really tough for them. Collingwood had a loss. Watching how Brisbane played them, I think, absolutely would be great. I don't think, still the Saints haven't got the calibre of players some of the Brisbane Lions are, but, a really good challenge for a young group. They'll see it over in Adelaide as a great one. I reckon Collingwood will still get the chocolates. If I was put my hard-earned, I reckon you don't lose 2 games out of the last 17 if you're that bad. So for me, the Pies could be the first loss for the Saints. I said that last weekend and they won by 10 goals. So let's hopefully it happens again.
You just keep tipping against St Kilda for the rest of the year, mate. You might be
absolutely.
Now, this one here, I reckon it's you say obviously Collingwood have only lost 2 out of the last 17 games, but they've lost 100% with no ruckman.
Yeah, there we go. We go. So Rowan Marshall, all eyes are going to be on him. So, look, it's going to be an interesting game. And as you say, it should be a cracker. It should be a really good game. Hopefully the young fellas don't get overwhelmed by the Saints, but by the way they've been playing, you wouldn't think they would. So it's going to be good.
And young Filippo back in front of his home crowd, and if he just looks like the kind of kid who just loves the big stage, doesn't he? Like he's excited, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him bag 2 or 3 on Sunday afternoon.
Well, that's what I'll be looking at this weekend. I love to put a couple of little multis on. I'll be looking at some of these small forwards from Rayner to Stengel to Philippa, all these guys kicking 2 goals plus.
Yeah, no, it should be good. And we've pretty well running out of time, but do you want to do we've nearly forgot your segment, Spide. We better get through it.
Absolutely. I'll wrap it in quickly.
Yep, I'll play it right now.
It's that time of the week where we find out what's been grinding the big fella's gears. It's time for Spider Bites.
Yeah, for me, it's simple this week. I couldn't believe it. I saw Jeremy Cameron kick 7. It was fantastic. He ran around the boundary. He was telling everyone about it. He had his arms out like Jesus, and he was going, how good am I? How good am I? And then he turns around and suddenly, bang, straight into an umpire, went down. We've all copped fines for running into umpires before. He copped nothing. He got up. They gave each other a hug. But hang on. Jeremy Cameron, if you ever run into an umpire and then go to the bench when the umpire stays on, that is embarrassing and weak to AFL football players. You should have, no matter what, even if you had a broken leg, you stay on that ground and don't show that you've been beaten up by an umpire. I couldn't believe it. I said, Jeremy, don't go to the bench. You have just taken away 120 years of the power of the player by saying we are the toughest men out there. The umpire has ragdolled you, brought you back up, wiped the tears from your eyes, grabbed a tissue out of his sock, said, Jeremy, you head to the bench. I've got to still boundary umpire a game. I was shattered. I was like, Jeremy, no way. You've just let down all your good work for that one little incident of being smacked down by an umpire. So, Jeremy Cameron, next time it happens, stay on the ground at whatever cost.
And the boundary umpire's been given 3 weeks for headbutting Jeremy Cameron's shoulder.
So he should have been, absolutely. So, yeah, for me, it was a great look. Sportsmanship was fantastic. It was great to see. Both of them had a laugh, but I still can't believe he went off.
Nah, can't argue with that, Spide. Up to much for the weekend, mate?
No, I'll be watching Gather Round. Really looking forward to it. I think, the footy over these weekends going to be massive. So for me, that is about it. I watched a bit of the golf, and whenever you go to the golf, just don't sit down near trees. That's my tip for this week. Wow. Anyway, they're being looked after for the rest of their lives. They're getting tickets to Augusta, so that's always nice. But enjoy Adelaide. Enjoy the spectacle it is. Those people who are around Adelaide, you'll absolutely love Gather Round because it is a celebration of the greatest sport we see in this country, which is AFL footy. You'll love it.
Nah, thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you this time next week. Cheers.
This has been the Third Man Up podcast. To hear more, make sure you follow and subscribe or find us on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter @Australia Sports.